Good evening, my visitors of the dark. Welcome back to the dark recesses of Dane's mind, with both me, your lovely host, Kumori, and our new visitor, as usual, Lady Nightmare, taking on a strange new form today.
Say hello to everyone.
I see you brought a book with you this time, rather than just stories.
Yes. I figured it would be nice to share a couple stories.
I see. From the looks of it, I can see that one of them is the continuation of a story I've read previously.
Yes. I've been able to find it from the depths.
Quite interesting to hear. So, to those of you who have managed to get into this place, sit down, quiet down, lights down, and the volume up, as we take you through more stories of the darkness. Do you mind if I take the lead on this one?
Not at all. Bring us deeper into the abyss of nightmares.
I shall. This story is a continuation of the people that wash up on the shore. A nice little nightmare that begins with a people dying so quickly as a sacrifice. There were two more this morning. I was waiting, watching the sea thrash and roll. I'm not sure where I drifted off. The same nightmare that kept me up the night before covered me again, leaving me in fits. I saw the boy's corpse laying in the waves, blood being pulled out with the sea foam. Suddenly, the clouds started rolling in. Wind whipped up sand and spray. I saw lightning flash down the shoreline and felt the thunder boom in my chest immediately after. Something was coming. The waves grew taller with each one that crashed the shore. When I looked closer, I saw that it wasn't just water hitting the shore. Drifters, hundreds of them, all tangled into each other in the waves, piling on top of each other as they hit the shore. Leaves made of bodies started to block the waves. Suddenly, the sky opened up above me. The wind stopped. The ocean calmed. The drifters lay in their piles, sleeping like the dead. The eye of the storm. Just as soon as it started, it was over. A million eyes snapped open at once. Their screams layered each other, creating an unholy chorus as they awoke and began flooding inland. Right before the flood, I caught a glimpse of the horizon. Gray clouds mired above rolling waves. Through the rain and wind, I could see something moving against the sky, wading through the depths of the water towards my home. I had seen pictures of skyscrapers, and this dwarfed them. Just as it began to become clear through the sheets of rain, a bolt of lightning struck in front of it. I woke with a start, jumping from the sand, looking in the direction it had been. The flood was gone. The day was gray but still. Just a dream. I shook the sleep from my eyes and resumed my vigil. I spotted one washing in with the waves, male, middle-aged. Other than the bump in the middle of their forehead and the long claw-like nails, you could have passed for a normal islander. I set to work, and was almost done with the carving when I heard a voice from behind me. There's another one. I looked up, startled. Nobody else came out here this early. After what happened, I didn't think anyone would ever come here again. I was surprised even more to see who it was. I was surprised even more to see that it was Vale. My apologies. Now nodding towards the shore ways to my left, I followed her gaze and saw another motionless form crumpled there, sea foam washing over it. Damn it all, I muttered. Time to kill two birds with one stone. I left the one I was working on and walked over to the new arrival. Before grabbing this one, I dunked my head into the water and sliced my palm, completing the part of the ritual ahead of time. As I began to drag the body back towards the first drifter, Vale ran up and grabbed the other arm, helping me along. It wasn't your fault, you know, she said, grunting with exertion. I was nearby when they found it. I should have told them to get away before I came to get you. I didn't even think they would do something like that. Don't blame yourself, I replied, letting go of the new drifter and kneeling down to the first. I took out my knife and plunged into the diaphragm. The piercing scream began, then died out quickly. The new drifter didn't stir. If they're showing up more often, you're going to need help, she said again, still watching as I doused the first one and struck a match. Teach me. I can handle it. I didn't answer, but threw the match down and started carving the new drifter. Small sizzles could be heard as ocean spray and light rain hit the burning body. I could still feel Vale's eyes on me, intently watching my hand work the knife through skin, carving my legacy in a living canvas. When the runes were done, I beckoned for her to follow me to the water. She stood beside me as water lapped over our feet. I looked out to the gray sky and rolling sea, remembering the moment my father brought me out here, how he had carved the runes, then walked me out to the water. Have you ever lost someone, Vale? I asked her. She seemed taken aback by the question at first, and looked down at the water as she pondered it. You knew my mother, she said. You know I lost her. You didn't know your mother. She died giving birth to you. Have you ever lost anyone you truly knew and loved? I shot back. Then, no, I guess I haven't. I sighed and unholstered my knife, turning towards her. If you take this on, you will lose someone you love, maybe more than one. That's what we give up in order to protect the land. Are you prepared to take that on? She seemed scared. I couldn't really blame her. She saw the aftermath of what happened yesterday. She knew what we would be dealing with. But underneath the fears there was desperation. Desperation to prove her strength and protect others. I am, she finally answered, after staring out at the foaming waves. What do I have to do? You're not of my bloodline, but there are certain cases where others can be allowed to take over. I looked down at my hand, the cut already clotted with blood. I swept the knife across it to reopen it. Come, we have to go further out. When we were waist deep in the water, I handed her the knife. Cut your palm and hold it open, I said. She winced as a sharp edge of steel sliced her hand. The blood flowed quickly, dripping into the water and leaving a red cloud. I held my hand above hers, making a fist and squeezing so a trickle of blood fell into her cut. Then I opened my own palm, placing it flat on hers so our cuts aligned, and took her hand under the water. She drew a deep breath in through her teeth as the salt water hit open flesh, but composed herself quickly. I, 𝓓𝓪𝓷𝓵, do hereby pass my bloodline on to Vale Jensen. Having no living children and having taken no wife, I realize that any day my bloodline may die and our cleansing end. Vale has offered herself as a tribute to the ocean, pledging to protect the island and all inhabiting it from the drifters and the heretical gods they served. Do you accept this duty, Vale? Yes, she replied. I motioned her to walk further into the water, letting go of her hand. She looked at me until, how far? Asking me, how far? Until the sea takes you, I replied. She nodded, walking further. At about 10 meters out, she was completely engulfed, going underwater. She came up moments later, walking back to my position. Her usually wild curly hair now lint and soaked around her shoulders. She shined with a new purpose as she rejoined me. You are aware that with this acceptance you may never leave the island, being the first and last defense against the unknown. You know that the ocean requires a heavy toll for your service and the power bestowed upon you. Do you still accept? I hoped she would say no, but knew in my heart she couldn't. It was the same feeling I had thinking back when I took the oath, my father standing in my place. Once you had the notion to take on the duty, it never left you. Yes, she said again. Vale Jensen, by my power and authority, being the last remaining of my bloodline, I surrender you to the sea. Today you are born anew in the salt and brine of the ocean. I withdrew my hand from the water, turning my fingers down so the mix of salt water and blood coated my fingertips. I drew the rune of her birth on her face, a clockwise spiral ending in a smaller spiral, spinning counterclockwise from the center. The ever-flowing dichotomy of life in the sea. I swear to serve with my life, she replied, giving a small bow. We'll start your training tomorrow, I told her. For now, I finish this ritual. You will walk back to the village and stand in the square until I return. Tell anyone that asks you are now my apprentice. Yes, sir, she said, walking back up to the beach. I sighed as she left, taking myself back to where the newest drifter lay on the sand. I kneeled next to him, hefting my knife once more. I placed it above the diaphragm, one hand holding it steady while the other was poised above it, ready to thrust downward. I bowed my head, closed my eyes and whispering a prayer. Protect her. Let me be the father to her I could never be to my own daughter, I muttered. My hand raised up, tensing at the expectation of pain when I hit the knife handle. I was more surprised to feel a handless as it moved downward. My eyes snapped open to see the drifter grabbing on, holding my hand back. Our numbers are infinite, it said. We serve, and we will be rewarded. We will devour you, drown you in the blood of your loved ones. We are vast as the ocean, and relentless as the waves. We will break you. The pure hatred in its eyes terrified me. It had never seen anything like it. The pure, dripping spite. It bored through my skin and into my soul. It despised me, and that cold, unfeeling stare almost seemed to freeze the entire world. I forced myself to move as it opened its mouth wide to scream, making the wind pick up and clouds grow dim. My other hand plunged its knife in. It screamed, turning to wet gurgles as it drowned, choking on blood. I fell back in the sand, shaking. After what seemed like eternity, I pulled the knife from its chest and got the gas can and nerves, beginning the final step of cleansing. I didn't stay to make sure the fire was put out, but instead rushed back up the path to the village, stopping at the first person I saw. Hello, Rain. Raleigh, anything I can do for you, he said. I didn't remember his name, but recognized him from the butcher shop in town. I need you to go to the shore and keep watch. If any wash up, come get me. I'll be speaking to Briggs in his office. He looked at me quizzically, not quite understanding why I would want an untrained person watching the shore. I ended up losing my temper. Just fucking go! He tore off up the path, leaving a dust cloud behind him. I rushed into the square, grabbing Vale, who was standing in the middle, chatting with some of the village women who were congratulating her. We barged into the office to Briggs' surprise. Raleigh, you didn't tell me you had chosen an apprentice already. I should have had final approval. I cut him off quickly before he finished. What the fuck is happening, Briggs? I shouted, causing both him and Vale to enter his turn. One of those damn things grabbed me and fucking spoke. They've never spoken before. His eyes grew wide. I could see Vale bring a hand to her mouth next to me. Briggs sat back in his chair, reaching into a drawer and pulling out a tall bottle filled with dark amber. He produced 3 glasses from the same drawer and started pouring. I'm sorry for overstepping your authority, he said, raising the glass to his lips and sloshing half of it down his shirt from shaking hands. I had hoped this wouldn't happen while I was in charge. Guess I had hoped for too much. He drained his glass, then got up and walked over to a portrait on the wall. Pulling the portrait up and setting it down on the floor, he revealed a safe behind it. He opened it and pulled out a large, leather-bound book, yellowed with age. The next item revealed was an old flintlock pistol. Everything you'll need to know is in there, he said, motioning to the book. I'm sorry, but it's just too much. He raised the gun to his temple and cocked the hammer. I barely had time to grab Vale and avert her eyes when he pulled the trigger. Warm blood and sharp skull fragments sprayed over us. My. What an unfortunate event for the young boy. Poor Raleigh.
Yes.
What's even worse?
One misfortune after another.
Indeed. A man who's now exposed to the eldritch that spoke. If I remember Dane's experience with the eldritch, it never ends well to those who hear its voice.
I would imagine not.
And the mayor had to take the easy way out to avoid training the new people about the drifter's voice.
Unfortunately, those of weak stomach in power usually do.
Indeed. Now, I see you have a new story at the ready.
Yes.
Mind giving me a nice synopsis as to what it could be?
I'll admit, just from the title alone, someone answered a midnight call when they shouldn't have.
Oh dear. Well then.
As it goes to show, one should never answer the door after midnight.
Indeed.
You never
I shall
know
let
what
you...
could be lurking on the other side.
Indeed. I shall let you take the lead on this one.
Thank you. Now, my dark lovelies, the story I present to you is one of simple title, but should show promise. I give to you, if the doorbell rings in the middle of the night, don't answer. I should have learned this lesson 4 years ago, when it would have made a difference, but I was young and foolish, and I was on exchange in a foreign country. And like much of what I learned at the time, it slid into half-forgotten memory, only to be painfully jolted back into consciousness at the most inopportune moments, because it has become too easy to forget the things I should remember. 4 years ago, I was in Germany, doing a thesis on brick Gothic architecture. The university there had been kind enough to arrange accommodation for us Americans too illiterate to go through the system, and I ended up in a beautiful pre-war building that had been subdivided into residential units. Now only the old Germany lettering on the facade pointed to its original purpose. Kinderheim. It means children's home, but actually it means more like orphanage, said my flatmate. I had 5 flatmates in total, and he was the one kind enough to give me a tour when I arrived. It was an immense building, and the necessity of the tour had become self-evident when he took me into the basement. As is common in buildings of this scale, its basement was a maze-like network of subterranean corridors, snaking around maintenance rooms and what I assumed were other apartments, as a couple doors led to side exits in the building. My flatmate led me around an impossible number of turns before we got to the grand finale, a large room with industrial washers and dryers. Here you can wash and hang up, he had said. The interaction encapsulated all the interactions I had with my roommates, quick and functional. We had no animosity that I could detect, but we were all German, and I think we were self-conscious about their English. They were all German, and I think they were all self-conscious about their English, though I couldn't find much wrong with it when we did speak. I, on the other hand, did my utmost to fulfill the American stereotype by not bothering to learn their language. Why did it matter if I was back home in a few months? I led a quiet existence, which was more or less how I liked it. On occasion, I did get drunk with that group of Americans that invariably forms when we leave our natural habitat, but I preferred to wander the old town streets and pore over references in the library. In the apartment, I rarely left the confines of my room except to use the bathroom or the kitchen, so It was only a little bit strange when December rolled around and everyone left for Christmas. We were all students, or apprentices, in that apartment, and we all had parents to go back to, apart from me, who was too broke for an intercontinental round trip. I elected to stay alone in that apartment for 6, or the 3 weeks which made up the most wonderful time of the year. I loved it. For these 3 weeks, the apartment became my house. I spread myself into the kitchen, left my boots in the hallway. I populated the freezer with chicken in preparation for the long supermarket holiday. I even left my toothbrush in one of the 2 bathrooms, the smaller one right by the apartment door, whose window looks down on a side entrance to the building. With so much freedom, my pattern became irregular. Some days I spent cooking, others I spent in bed, only to leave the apartment sometime past midnight on a directionless wander. The town would be beautifully empty, and I was free to go where my boots would take me. This regular irregularity eventually congealed into one blissfully monotonous static. So it was especially jarring when the doorbell rang in the middle of the night. I was asleep, and when I was awoken, I hadn't bothered to check the time. My first response was to be annoyed. It was more a buzzer than a bell, and a loud one at that. Still, it took another ring for me to convince myself I wasn't dreaming. It was a longer one this time, more insistent. At this time of night, I slid out from the covers, dressed only in my underwear. Possibilities rushed through my mind. Was it one of my flatmates who came back early? Had he forgotten his key? My bare feet padded down the long hallway. At the end of it, next to the apartment door, was the intercom system that communicated with the front entrance. I picked up the receiver and put it to my ear. Hello? Involuntarily looked over my shoulder. I hadn't turned on the lights, perhaps out of habit from when I wasn't alone in the apartment. But I was alone. No response came from the other end of the intercom, just static interference. I tried again. Hello? Is anybody there? Then I could hear the sound of a voice, a woman's voice, crying. I froze, unprepared for this eventuality. 2 of my flatmates were women. Could something have happened? I cried. The crying voice further materialized into words, German words. It was a stream of desperate syllables. I couldn't understand anything. Mentally, I cursed myself for not making more of an effort to learn the language before launching into the only German I knew. Wie bitte? Anna? Is that you? A confused huh? From the other side. From the other end. Or was it a sob? I tried again. Franzi? There was a pause. Then, as if spurred by a list of 2 unfamiliar names, the crying started again. It was louder, another barrage of unintelligible syllables. Through the sobbing, frustration at not being understood, crescendoing her voice into a shout. But this time I could pick out one word. even with my limited understanding. Help. I then realized that I wasn't hearing her voice solely through the intercom. I took a step into the bathroom. I could hear her sobbing coming in through the bathroom window, that one that looked down on the side of the door to the basement. That meant she wasn't at the front entrance, where the intercom was. Maybe it was because of this detail that I didn't open the door immediately. I was sure that the intercom was only at the front entrance. The cord was already stretched to its limit, so I set the receiver down to look out the window. It slipped from my cold fingers and clattered down to the tile floor. I left it there, opening the window to crane my head. It was no use, too dark, and the window was too far out to see the side door. I closed the window. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was an intercom at the side entrance. I went back to press the button that would let her in, but I stopped. She was crying really loudly, obviously desperate, and I was a half-naked foreigner. I ran back to my room and put on some clothes. It took much longer than it should have to find the sweatpants I'd discarded on the floor, and there wasn't a clean t-shirt in the closet. I dug one out of the dirty laundry hamper, and as I came back into the hallway, I knew that I must have taken too much time. No crying woman would wait this long at a stranger's door before moving on to other options. I got to the intercom and pressed the button. The buzzer sounded, signifying the front door was unlocked, but it was too far away for me to hear whether someone opened it, and if the woman was indeed at the side entrance to the basement, I definitely would not hear it open. I turned the knob and stuck my head out. The hall was dark. She was gone. She must be. If she had come in, she would have flicked on the house lights unless she was distraught, vision blurred by tears, and didn't know where the switch was because she was in a strange apartment building. Come on, man, think. I swung the door open, but again I stopped. I didn't have the key on me, and the door would lock automatically. I was alone in the apartment, so if I locked myself out, I wouldn't be able to help myself, much less a woman suffering from God knows what. I needed to go back to my room. Just then, I heard voices. They ricocheted off the hard concrete walls of the stairway. I couldn't tell if they came from upstairs or downstairs. There were two of them. One was a woman, sobs still in her voice, but she was calmer now, in conversation. She sniffled as she spoke. The other was also female, but lower pitched and calmer. Her question seemed confused, as if she had just been woken up. I eavesdropped further, but the muffled echoes just sounded like German to me. I went back inside, closed the door behind me. This was probably for the better. Not only did she find someone to help, but someone to actually understand her. It wasn't a job for me. When I slid back into the warmth of my bed, I realized I'd been shivering. Strange events on a cold night. I did not expect myself to find sleep anytime soon, but I did. And when I woke up in the morning, I had already forgotten the incident. It became one of those dreams that fell between fantasy and nightmare. the ones so slightly bizarre that the waking mind forgets them, until strange details are triggered by moments of déjà vu. Even then, it's unclear whether this fragment of the past is real, or just half-remembered dream. I had a Skype call with my parents scheduled for that next afternoon, their morning. It was just to say hi, Merry Christmas, wish I could be there. They like to make Christmas into an all-day thing, and catching them for a moment before they started ended up far less tiring than being there in person. After I hung up, my brain occupied itself with other matters of waking life. What movie to watch today, whether or not to roast the chicken I had in the freezer. How to enjoy the last 6 days of being alone in the apartment. I did not remember the incident from the night before, even when everyone came back for the new semester and an ambulance took the body away. I had decided to walk home from a morning class that day. The ice underfoot hadn't been melted by the winter sun. I only looked up in time to see it pull out of the driveway. There was a group of neighbors standing at the front entrance, gossiping. One seemed to be crying. In the fray, I noticed my flatmate, the one who had given me the tour on my first day. He beckoned me over. "It's good that it's a cold winter this year," he said in his German accent. "What do you mean?" "Mary from upstairs. Her flatmate came back today and found her. She was dead since a week." Nobody could give a straight answer to how Mary from upstairs had died. "She suffocated in the night," someone said. "No, it was suicide. She did it in the bathtub. It certainly couldn't be murder, because in the months I remained in the apartment, no cop came knocking." And being one of the few actually in the building at the time, I would be a person of interest. I was as morbidly curious as the next, but it never seemed a good time to ask. "Excuse me, do you speak English? Can you tell me how that girl died?" Nobody voiced these questions, not even the police, it seemed. As time passed, so did the curiosity, until he was just the girl who died. Death happened all the time, today, tomorrow, and so on. It was sad and shocking, but explainable. I didn't attend the funeral. Instead, I started an affair with a classmate of mine, an American girl, then went back to Indiana to complete my thesis. I got an A, got a car, got a job, got more debt. I rented a small apartment on the cheaper side of town so Lauren could come over when he could make the 6-hour drive. Life was good. But every time the doorbell rang, I would start to shiver. It was Lauren that noticed it. The first time she came to visit, she had parked her car and rung the bell. I came downstairs to pull her into a kiss. She grabbed my hand. "You're shivering. Are you nervous?" "Am I? I guess I'm just cold." "Come here. I know how to warm you up." She really did. We decided to stay in bed all day and order in. When the doorbell rang, I was too tired and naked to answer, so she put on a t-shirt and got the pizza. When she came back in, she stared at me. "Are you okay?" I think it was in this moment that she that started her habit of studying me. Every now and then, I would catch her staring at me while I was preoccupied with whatever I was doing. It was in the way a girlfriend would look at her boyfriend. More like an eye through a microscope, watching a bacteria culture, wondering how it moved and why it wasn't moving now. We broke up when the lockdown hit. According to her, we broke up because I was inattentive and emotionally distant. But she had been cold for a few weeks, and the virus was a convenient catalyst for ending things. With her gone, I was once again left to my own devices. I got laid off. I had nobody to adjust my schedule to. I spent my days cooking and sitting on the couch, chasing every nostalgia that came to me. With her gone, I had nobody to ring my doorbell to come up and remind me of distant memories of a time that must have been important to somebody somewhere. But now a memory is emerging to the surface, a forgotten dream that has to be written down before it slips the mind again. The kind that can only be recalled through a passing of déjà vu. And now I can remember more and more. I'm starting to be scared. Because the doorbell has been ringing every night.
My. Just to think how a man like him, out of his main country, could be haunted by something that follows him back.
Agreed.
It's quite astonishing. And to think that I left such a permanent mark that even his girlfriend had to leave him.
That was pretty cold of her, if I do say so myself.
Then again, he might have more colder company considering what might be at his door now.
So, do you think that maybe it was the ghost of Mary that haunts him?
It could be.
Or is it his own
But
guilt?
I think it may be both. A manifestation of a horror of a ghost being inflicted with someone's guilt, twisting their body and mind into that of a horrifying creature. I should know, considering I am a shadow of Dane, but I live off of his negative emotions when he goes hunting. Just as you sustain yourself through the nightmares of others.
Yes. Quite fair.
But for now, I believe it would be a good time for us to part ways.
Until next time. Pleasant dreams.
Indeed.
And sweetest nightmares, my darlings.
Good tidings and good night, my simple followers.